If you are already playing guitar at 180 beats per minute and 16th notes or faster, then the method I'm going to show you in this video may or may not work for you because you may need more specialized and nuanced training to make your speed increase. But if you're not at this speed yet, then good news, because you can use the method I'm going to show you to see pretty noticeable gains in your guitar speed in a relatively short amount of time, sometimes even in just one practice session. Here's how it works. Step 1. Find an exercise you want to build your speed with. Ideally, this should be something you already know really well, but just hit a speed plateau with, so maybe like a scale sequence you already played a whole bunch of times, maybe like this. Step 2. Find your current top speed with your exercise. Now, top speed is the fastest tempo where you can play all the notes without mistakes, but you wouldn't feel confident going on stage and playing at that speed in front of other people. Now, don't overanalyze this. Just pick some tempo that approximately fits that description and then move on to the next step. Step 3. Add 10 beats per minute to your current top speed. So if your current top speed in step 2 was 120 beats per minute, add 10 BPM to that. That's 130. That's the tempo you're going to be working up to in the following steps. Step 4. Isolate a little 4 to 8 note fragment out of your exercise. So if my scale sequence, the example I showed you earlier, was this, a little fragment I can isolate from that will be this. Step 5. Take out your metronome and set it to your tempo from step 3, which, if you recall, was your top speed plus 10 BPM. In my case, I said my top speed would be 120 BPM plus 10 more, that's 130. So that's what I've set my metronome to, 130. And then I'll take the fragment that I found in step 4, which in my case was this, and I'm going to play it to this tempo, 130 BPM, but I'm going to play it using note values that are twice as long than the typical note values I'd use for that exercise. So in my case, the scale sequence is in 16th notes, 4 notes per beat, but to play the note values that are twice as long would be 8 notes or 2 notes per beat. So if you're playing a 16th note scale sequence, use 8 notes here. If you're playing a 16th note triplet scale sequence or exercise, then use 8 note triplets. So what you've done here is, of course, you increase the tempo, but the notes are twice as long, so overall your playing still feels very slow and very easy, and it sounds like this. And this gets you ready for step number 6, where you'll be playing a fragment at the faster tempo, using the note values that are twice as long to establish a baseline and a foundation of flawless technique and flawless playing, like this. Notice a couple of things. Notice that for the first 2 repetitions, I was watching my picking hand, then I looked over here and watched my fretting hand for the next 2 repetitions. This was not an accident, this was very deliberate. Notice also that I gave myself a couple of clicks between the repetitions. That was also very deliberate. What that allowed me to do is to make sure that my body was fully relaxed and ready for the next repetition. I wanted to memorize what that feeling feels like. So I'd play the fragment once while watching my picking hand, make sure that my pick was moving efficiently the best way I know how. Then after the repetition was over, I gave myself a couple of clicks to fully relax my body, make sure I was ready for the next pass through the fragment. Then I'd play it again. Then I switched over here for the fretting hand and basically did the same thing. For the first repetition, I was making sure my fingers were moving correctly. Then I relaxed everything. Then I repeated the fragment one more time. This step is possibly the most important of this entire process, because the better job you do here, the easier the next step becomes. And now in step 7, you're going to play your fragment at the same tempo, which is going to be 130 in my case, using the normal note values you would typically use for your exercise, which in my case would be 16th notes. It's going to sound like this. Play it 2 times. And the purpose of this is to test how well you're able to maintain the economy of motion, the relaxation, and the accuracy during your faster playing compared to the slower playing. This is why it's so important to get the previous step, step 6, right. Because the better you're able to focus on all the things you got to pay attention to and get them into your muscle memory, the easier it's going to be to give yourself rapid feedback during step 7 to tell if you're doing this right or not. And the goal here is to make it feel basically the same. Whether you're playing 8th notes or 16th notes, you should not feel more tense during 16th notes and more relaxed during 8th notes. It should feel basically the same. It should sound basically the same. Your synchronization should be the same, the whole thing. And that is step 8, going back and forth between 8th notes and 16th notes, like this. Once you're able to do that, you're going to be well on your way to playing the entire lick faster at this new faster tempo, because all you're going to do is add 1 or 2 more notes to your fragment to make it a little bit longer and repeat the process. Go back and forth between 8th notes or 8th note triplets and 16th notes or 16th note triplets. And when you're doing 8th notes, make sure your technique is nice and relaxed, make sure you've got economy of motion, make sure the synchronization is tight, make sure everything's sounding good, and then switch to 16th notes and make sure you can maintain that. Go back and forth until you're certain the new fragment is holding together nicely, then add more notes and repeat the process. Now, this is by no means the only way or the best way to build guitar speed, nor is it the only way I recommend that you use. It's simply one that is pretty simple to learn, pretty simple to teach, and pretty quick to see results with them. And if you do what I laid out so far, you can potentially be playing 10 BPM faster like today or by tomorrow. And most importantly, it's pretty liberating to realize that you don't have to start really, really slow and repeat the exercise a whole bunch of times and gradually increase the metronome a few BPM at a time until you're hopefully able to get to the speed you want, because that way of playing doesn't really work nearly as well as most people think that it does. If you want me to show you one more way to build your guitar speed without any slow practice, check out the link in the description of this video. Go to the page on the screen right now. I'm going to show you a 1-hour masterclass called Guitar Speed Formula that explains it in great detail. Also, when it comes to building guitar speed, remember step 6 when I talked about what you need to pay attention to? It's really important that you get this step right, and there are some specific guitar technique nuances that you have to be mindful of to make sure you're getting this practice strategy working for you the way that it should. And I talk about what these things are in this video right here. I highly recommend you watch it next.